That's the chance.
First one I shot
How are you guys? Good. Is this where you want us to go?
You can't do that when they come in. Oh.
Yeah, the coffee cups on there too.
You have the audience rise, please.
Linda.
Whoops, I didn't shoot you.
That's over at the far end. It's over the far end. Over at the far end. Straight through. Yeah, just right in front.
Please be seated. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see so many people here. We know Rod was really well liked. He knew everybody. He had a lot of friends. And so thank you for traveling here and sharing his celebration of life with all of us. The last time I had the honor to speak at a funeral, it was actually my grandfather, Sid Tusher. And I feel the same way about Rod as I did with my grandpa. He's my idol. And he shared a lot of things with me that I wish I was as good as he was. So I'll run through our program here really quickly, and we'll have an opening prayer by Cliff Keller, who was a great friend of Rod's. He worked on the farm for a number of years and was really an adopted member of the Pearce family. And then Michael Pearce, his son, will give us the life sketch. And then we'll have a song by Nate Palmer, a great nephew, a song called Fishing in the Sky. And then we'll have opportunities for family members and friends to come up and share stories about Rod that were so special to them. I know it's not on the program, but then I'm going to squeeze in a few closing remarks if we have a little bit of time left, and then grandson Sean Pearce will give a closing prayer. So with that, Cliff.
Our dear Father in heaven, as we gather here today as friends and families of this good man, we feel to thank thee for the many blessings we received in knowing him and being able to hopefully learn from his example of kindness and service, and would ask you to bless that we can apply those in our own lives to help us be more Christ-like in our dealings with our fellow man. We're so grateful for the good friends and family that he had, that he has. We'd ask you to bless that my spirit will be in attendance here, that as people get up and try to share memories, that they'll be able to do so with strength and conviction, and knowing that their lives are better because of Rod. We ask special blessing to be upon Nancy and the rest of the family. Please help and comfort and give strength to them. Know that they may know that a short period of time that we'll be away from Rod, and then there'll be a great reunion at some time. We're so thankful for this beautiful area that we have to live in, and for many things we've been blessed with. And say, in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Amen.
I think I'm going to start this by quoting Yogi Berra. This is like deja vu all over again, since we did this 2 months ago. I can only think of a little bit harder time when we had Reed Gary leave us in 2 days. That was a tough time too, although I was thinking it was just a brief period of time ago, just a couple of years, but it was 2018, so time goes by fast. And if I start to cry, it's not really because I'm emotional, it's because my allergies are really getting me today. So Dad's life sketch. Had worked more private because there was so much that I could put in. He was a pretty dynamic man, and so I tried to condense it down to just those take-home messages, the executive summary, so I didn't make it last too long. So Rodney Alan Pearce passed away at home on May the 17th of 2025 due to complications of old age. He was born on August 15th, 1983 to John, Grandpa Jack, David Lafayette Pearce, and Edith Bingham Pearce in Cornish, Utah. He spent his youth swimming in the West Cache Canal, working on the family dairy farm, playing in the river runs along the Bear River. He and his friends would hunt magpies, and then they would take them to the Cornish store, where they would collect a 5-cent bounty per magpie head that they would collect. And they would run around to the back of the store. They would wait a little while until the store owner would then put the magpie heads in the garbage, collect those heads again, wait for a few more minutes, come back to the store, collect another 5 cents. I'm pretty sure that the store owner knew what was up, but he said he earned a lot of nickels that way. One day as a youth, while wrestling with his dad in the front room, he happened to flip Grandpa Jack over his shoulder, and when Jack landed, Jack broke his ankle. And so Dad was always proud that he had bested his dad at a young age, but then he always commented that he had to play penance for his activity because he spent the next few weeks milking cows by himself. Either there or not, he was a little too young, but had to milk the cows by himself until Grandpa Jack's ankle was healed and the cast could come off. They could go back up into the dairy farm. Dad and his family left the dairy farm and moved from Cornish to Lewiston when Dad was 12 years old. Dad would relate stories how the Lewiston home was old and it was cold, and how he and his brothers would share a bed in the upstairs bedroom. During the wintertime, he didn't mind it because the extra help keep them all warm, but in the summertime, maybe just a little too close. During his summers while in high school, he worked for the Forest Service. This was the start of the construction of the Palisades Reservoir. He also worked at Jackon Lake Lodge doing odd jobs such as working in the kitchen, doing food prep, and cleaning bathrooms. He also worked with his dad delivering milk to the grocery stores in western Wyoming and southeastern Idaho for Rocky Mountain Dairy. In high school, he played football and basketball. He liked to remember that when the face bar for football helmets first came out, that everybody on the team thought that they were for wimps, and that everybody was equally happy that it helped protect their nose. It was during his high school years that he was also involved in a car crash, and wasn't fortunately hurt too badly, but he remembers a comment about looking down and seeing blood spurting from the gash in his wrist, and I can't remember if it was right side or left side. But we as children, fortunately a little bit of pressure on that was life-saving. Later the scar on his wrist was interesting for we as children to watch because we could watch the pulsation of his artery underneath the scar. After graduating from North Cache High School in 1956, he attended college for one semester at JC in Grand Junction, Colorado, on a football scholarship. He found that college was a little more demanding than high school, and he decided to join the Army in November of 1956. During the year that he spent in the Army, he was assigned to the ABC Corps at Fort Ord, California. He was assigned duties of monitoring and collecting data and information during various atomic bomb tests and other weapons tests. He'd like to tell a story about one of his experiences during the bomb tests, where he was standing with his back to the blast. He had eye protection on, but as the energy from the atomic bomb blast came through, he had his hand in front of his face and then could see the outline of his hand from the energy of the blast. After he completed his service in the Army, he joined his family in Denver, Colorado, where they had moved, where his father had taken a new job in Denver area, working for Rocky Mountain Dairy. There, he opened up a small grocery store in the neighborhood. He was robbed at gunpoint one night, and after that, he decided he needed to have a little extra protection, so he bought a small pistol that he would carry in the pocket of his army jacket. And one night, while he was in his car, just having a close-up shot, he thought he saw the same man who had robbed him before coming towards him. He decided to reach into his pocket to take the pistol out. And as he reached into his pocket, the pistol went off, grazing the side of his leg, creasing the fold in his pants, and then going through the floor of the car that he was driving. He decided after that maybe the pistol wasn't such a good idea. After the store was robbed the second time, this time by potentially somebody from the police department in Denver, he decided it was time to sell the store and move back to Preston, which he did in 1960. He lived with his Aunt Lucille and Uncle Ken. After returning here to Preston until his parents moved back from Denver to Lewiston. And it was during this time at a dance at the Blood Bucket Burger. I thought about telling more about this story. Unless they told me I should keep it not that that is a dirty story, but anyway, the Bloody Bucket may have been. Anyway, the Bloody Bucket, which is, for those who don't know, it's just a small bar that used to be on the north end of Preston, which you go out towards Downey. They met at a dance there one night, and they were later married on March the 17th, 1961. They began their new life together in Preston, Idaho. They took a job at Vicol making Minuteman missile parts, while Nancy continued to work as a teller at First Security Bank. Then over the next 7 years, they welcomed sons Michael and Alan and brought Rusty to the family. During this time, Rod decided to leave Vicol and then took a job selling milk with his father for Cream and Liver Dairies in southeastern Idaho, and in 1967, he took over the Franklin County portion of the business. And then for the next 15 years, he continued to deliver milk and ice cream products in the county. And he greatly enjoyed talking to customers he would meet in the stores, and was a friend to everyone. In 1979, he bought the farm here in Whitney and moved there to have more area to raise horses. Then in 1982, he decided to transition from the delivery side of the dairy business to the production side of the dairy business and started the dairy farm. He would often quip and guff, you'll know this, you as well. There's only one thing dumber than a dairy cow, and it's the man who knows them. He loved showing folks who would come to the farm what a titmouse was. I've already heard stories about that today. And would laugh loudly, particularly one time when his sister-in-law, Cleone, who was out in the dairy barn, couldn't quite figure out how to put the milk around the bowl, and that had happened to come through the milk parlor. That's a fun story as well. He continued on the dairy farm until he retired. And During his life, he enjoyed many hobbies and activities. In the 1970s, he was active on the famous Wrestling Rodeo Board and was a parade chairman for a number of years. He enjoyed his horses and raised Arabians. I've always said he was horse poor. He would work hard on the milk truck all week, so he could take time off on the weekend to show his horses. He had Everdawn, which was his prize horse. You can see some of the ribbons here in front, and the two won many show together. He was also active in the Boots and Saddle Club for many years and enjoyed showing all the quarter horse and thoroughbred riders how good the Arabians were in the mountains, and that his Arabians were able to outwalk all the other horses. He enjoyed skiing, hunting, fishing, and many other outdoor activities. And he would often say that the money he spent on skiing with his kids and extended family of farmers, that was some of the best money he ever spent. One of the worst days of his life occurred when he had to sell his skis because he had his knee replaced. And he pleaded with his orthopedist quite a bit to let him keep skiing, but ultimately he decided it was better to be a good patient and begrudgingly accepted the fact that his skiing days were over. He enjoyed fishing and continued to hold up the family tradition of spending the opening day fishing season on the Upper River and on Diamond Creek each summer. He did this for many years. And after he retired, one of his favorite activities was spending time with who we refer to as his fishing buddies on the salmon river, fishing for steelhead and trout. These trips took place generally 3 times a year. The group generally traveled with 2 camp trailers just like him. One for those who snored, and one for those who knew whether CPAP and didn't snore. As a poem, I'll just say I appreciate that. He was also president of the Franklin County Fish and Game Association, and it was during this time that he and many others worked with the state fish and game department, improving access and maintaining the well for Oneida Narrows river fishery. And he and others in the association spent countless hours working to prevent the placement of a dam at the mouth of the Narrows, which would have wiped out the fishery in the canyon. He also worked with others like the Sagebrush Stuff Foundation to preserve wildlife habitat for deer and elk in the area. As Dad grew older, he hated the effects aging had on his ability to do things. One of his greatest fears in life was that he would become irrelevant and depended upon others to do things for him. He always liked having a job to do and being able to perform his own job. In 2017, he suffered a hemorrhage in the back of his brain, which left him regain much of his strength and mobility, but never got back to what he was. And he was no longer able to go hunting and fishing on his own. But even with his decreased mobility, he enjoyed going out and sitting on the riverbank and casting a line, and hopeful that if he caught a fish, it would be a good day. Then in February a year ago, he survived another potential life-threatening health scare. He developed a 6-inch aneurysm on his the artery that goes to his liver. And while the aneurysm was successfully treated, he never fully recovered from the debilitating effects of this and continued to gradually lose ground. But despite this, he was always driven each day to feed barn calves, using his walker to travel to and from the barn. He drew his last breath participating in 2 of his favorite activities. The first, talking with his neighbors, and the second was watching the Preakness horse race. He is preceded in death by his parents, Jack and Edith, his brothers, Gary and Reed, his son, Alan. He's survived by his wife, Nancy, sons Michael, daughter Leslie, and many beloved grandchildren, great-grandchildren, his sister Linda Palmer, and many other beloved nephews and nieces.
Thank you, Mike. That was wonderful. Nate, would you like to come up?
of gold, mansions up on high, the land where you'll never grow old, no one ever cries. God, he loves and talks to me, so he knows just what I like. Got a lake just for me and my sweet by and by. I'll have a cabin by the lake, shade trees that grow so high. There'll be crickets, birds to sing when I'm fishing, fishing in the sky. Shade trees that grow so high, there'll be crickets, birds to sing when I'm fishing, fishing in the sky. I know my dad is happy, I wouldn't wish him here. Oh, how I miss him so. It's been a long, hard year. God, he loves and talks to me, so I won't be alone. I can't wait to go home. I'll have a silver boat that sparkles, it'll be lined with fleece so white. Have a rod and reel that's made of gold, the fish will always bite. I'll have a cabin by the lake, shade trees will grow so high. I can't wait until you get here, I'll take you fishing, fishing in the sky. I know that I will see him in heaven when I die, in the sweet by and by. I'll have a silver boat that sparkles, it'll be lined with fleece so white. Have some rod and reels that are made of gold, fish will always bite. We'll have a cabin by the lake, shade trees that grow so high. There'll be crickets and birds to sing when we're fishing, fishing in the sky. Oh, we're fishing.
Well done, Jake. Thank you so much for doing that. I know it meant a lot to Leslie when Rod was recovering from his stroke.
I'll go first again because I'm already up here. Last week when we were up here for Memorial Day, Leslie and I were talking, and we got talking about what Leslie calls Rodisms. And so just words and misspoken words and other phrases that he would use. So I decided to give my remembrances of Dad based upon these phrases. And so he had a lot of them. And as I went through, I don't know, I could have filled pages and pages of stuff with it, but these are the ones that I came up with. Probably the most important thing I learned from my dad was be friendly to everyone and treat everyone with respect. You never know when you might need to ask that person for help. He taught me that story, I learned that when I was probably 14, 15 years old. He and I were working on the truck one day, and we had been, this in Alice grocery store, that tells you how long ago it was. And because, I'll try not to get too tangential, but anyway, we were in the grocery store, and there was an individual who happened to come by. This particular individual was one of Preston's higher social class individuals, and they'd been asking for a little bit of help, and I was not paying too much attention with you. Dad came over, helped the individual out, and then he waited until we got out to the truck. Kind of tapped me on the shoulder and told me, hey, always respect everybody, always be a friend to everybody, because you never know when you may have to ask that individual for help. And through the course of the years, I've watched Dad do that to many people in the community who he would help them out. Come down on the farm and give them a few extra bucks to move a little bit of milk or haul a little bit of hay, just to help somebody who was down and out. And that lesson served me really well through my professional career in time, particularly in the hospital where you've got 30,000 employees and you see a lot of people. You know that it doesn't matter if it's the housekeeper, the engineering guys, everybody's in the job to help me support my job. Be kind to them and they'll help you out whenever you need to. The second phrase that Dad loved to use was, if it would have been a snake, it would have bit you. I hated hearing that phrase. Eventually, I heard it enough that it simply became, if it would have been a snake. And I would usually hear that because he would send me on an errand and I would be looking for something and I couldn't find it. And of course, he would come over and, particularly in the barn, Dad's filing system for his tools was not too good. It was like this bucket or that bucket. And you couldn't find what you were looking for. Of course, he knew right where it was because he had put it there. And Dad wouldn't always put it in a snake. And then one day, though, I got back at him. He had some ground out by the airport that he had rented and was out going to cut the hay one day. And the chain on the baler broke. So he had called and told him, this is the tool they needed to fix it. So I got the tool for him, drove out there, and as he was, I decided instead of driving his pickup truck around, I drove my truck. And unfortunately, my truck didn't happen to have a set of reading glasses in it. Because where the housing fits over the top of the chain to protect it, if he had his head underneath the housing so that he could see where he could need to put the link to put the chain back together, it was too close and he couldn't see the chain properly. But if he stretched his arms out far enough so that he could see where he needed to see, then unfortunately his head was out from underneath the shroud and he couldn't see things. So while I was trying to do this by feel, if any of you have worked on a chain before, you know that there's a little master link that you have to clip in. He dropped that master link. And so, being smart aleck, he walked up, picked up the master link, looked at him and said, "Would have been a snake." He didn't like that too much. And rather than take the high road and let me put the chain together, because back then I didn't need bifocals, he decided he was bound, determined to put that damn thing back together by himself. And he eventually got it, done it all by feel. And then he told me, if he would have brought my truck, this would have been a problem. The lesson, the moral of the story there is always have a backup. And after that, I noticed that he always now kept a set of reading glasses in his truck and in the tractor. The next one that he always said was, Grandma Edith was slow, but she's getting old. And eventually, Grandma Edie is dead. Dad always liked to get things done quickly. And so he'd get things done quickly and move on to the next task because there was always something to do, whether it was on the truck, there was always something extra to do on the farm, no matter how much time you take. The take-home lesson from that phrase was, it's good to work hard, it's good to play hard, but sometimes it's good just to sit back, enjoy the moment, and take it a little bit of time. Another phrase that I hated hearing about it was, well, there used to be a good trail in here 20 years ago. So when I was in high school, we would meet together in the summer times each Wednesday night, and we would go out on motorcycle rides. And they were always a lot of fun, but you never knew what kind of problems you were going to get into, because this race came into play many, many times. And we'd oftentimes get down to the bottom of a hollow or a canyon, because there's a good trail down there that we can ride out on. And you'd get down there and find out that the beavers had filled in a canyon and now it was flooded and you couldn't get around, or some other major problem. It also happened to us when we would go hunting. One day I'd come back from residency, and he decided that it was good for us to go hunting up Sugar Creek, and we got back into there. It was just a miserable day. I don't know why we went. It was snowing hard. It was blowing to beat the band. We got up on top of the hill, and I think Cliff has a very similar story, but in a different part of the mountain, of not knowing exactly which way we needed to go. Because of what he taught me, I always had a compass with me. And the answer was, well, I know we've got to go this way, but Dad, that's not north, that's south. Well, the compass must be wrong. So the lesson is, while it's good to have memories of old times, it's also good to think about things, scout things out, and make sure your path is still that you're traveling through in life. Another one of his great phrases was, even a bad day's fishing is better than a good day at work. Once Dad retired, he had time to fish. He used to love to call me and say, hey, we're going fishing in 2 days, you want to come with? And the answer was always the same. I'd love to go fishing with you, Dad, but you know I can't. I gotta work for a living. And it just got harder and harder and harder for Dad to go out. But even after he had his stroke, after he had his hemorrhage, he would love to go out and just sit on the bank. And last time we went fishing with him was 2 years ago, and it was just after opening the fishing season on the Upper Blackfoot River. And we had his dad walk her to go down through the brush and travel down, and we just parked him on the side of the bank at a meaningless little hole that Marion had fish. He had his fishing pole, and while I would move back and forth, catching a few fish, he just sat there until I'd come back and say, you know, Daddy, you had a little bit of moss on the end of that hook. Maybe you better bring it in. So he'd bring it in and then throw it, and I'd offer to help him to the next fishing hole to see if we could try to catch a few more. But the important thing wasn't that he was there to catch fish. The important thing was that he was there simply to be out in nature that he loved and be bitten fishing. This is one that Mother needed to hear. If it's time to get new tires for the truck, it's time to get a new truck. So, every 40,000 miles, 3 years, new pickup truck in the driveway. And particularly over his last pickup truck he bought in 2010, because that's the same year I bought mine. And I loved him to no end, but he couldn't go out and buy a new one, even though the oil was still really good. But that's the MO, buy a truck every 3 years. To go along with that phrase is, real men drive trucks, real smart men drive Fords. So, this is probably 10 years ago, or how many ever years ago, not this last time that Leslie hosted at Bear Lake, but the time before that, so count the number of 2012 then. So we happened to pull into the Hoosier property on Bear Lake. Thanks, Mike, for letting us have our family meetings over there. It's always a good time. But as we pulled in, I counted 14 Ford pickups, one Chevy. One Chevy. I won't say the black sheep of the family. this is a phrase that suited me. I heard a lot as well, because as you go through your professional life, as with any other job, you find that there are good days and bad days. Some days you really love your job, other days you don't. Other days, sometimes you have a bigger battle that you wish you didn't have to fight. When I get grousing about the struggles of work and the hours and everything else, this is the phrase that I would usually hear. There are two of them, actually. The first is, at least on the farm, when you get hit in the face with a crappy tail, you know where it came from. You have to put in the farm right there appropriately. So. The other phrase was, well, you can always come back home and we can put another 50 head of cows on the farm. The take-home message from that is, it always helped me remember why I love the farm. The hours are the same, but my pay's much better. But having said that, there are always a lot of farm, great advantages to having been on the farm. And I miss the farm, I thought. The last phrase I'll leave you with is actually from my sons. We had come up many years ago. So it's got to be 20 now, because Sean was about 12, and so Connor would have been 6 or 7, I guess, at the time. And we just had a nice weekend out. We'd done stuff on the farm, we'd helped with cows, we'd gone fishing, and we came back home, and Sue asked the boys, well, how was spending your time with Grandpa? And I don't remember if it was Sean or if it was Connor who said, being with Grandpa is like being at a PG-13 movie. So, that's language can sometimes be colorful. But there are, as I tell people all the time at the hospital, there are words on the farm which are not the swear words elsewhere in the world. Or swear words elsewhere, but not swear words on the farm. And they only listened to her dad drop an F-bomb once. And that's because we'd been fishing on the lower Blackfoot River this time. And he was the only one that hadn't caught any trout. And he was only catching suckers, and asked him how his days they had been. He showed me the pile of suckers that he'd stacked up on the bank. Dropped the F-bomb once. And that was one of the fun things about being around Dad, is as we had the rods, and he never really knew sometimes which was going to come out of his mouth. And it's all kinds of fun stories that I hear over the course of time about different things that he would say, his specific way of saying things. For example, he could never say spaghetti, it was always a sketty, and that was always what made Dad fun. We'll miss having him around. He's a great man, and I love him, and we'll miss him. Your turn.
Too many stories.
See if he's going to
Years ago, we went on an Alaskan cruise, the whole family together, and there was a day that it was just really cold, so to sit out on the deck or the patio, we were just freezing, and we were sitting talking to Rod and Nancy, Rick and I, and we decided to go back up to the room because it was so cold, and so Rod decided he'd go back too. We were in the elevator, and another couple came on the elevator with us, and as it starts to go up, Rod looks at them and says, it's a really cold day, and the people start going, it is, we're gonna go up and get warm, and he said to the people, it kind of makes you wonder where your underwear is. And Rick and I just stood there, and the people were kind of going like, But my favorite memory is at the rodeo. when my son was a baby. He was a year old. And we left our children and Terry's children and anyone else who had children with Leslie and Michelle and Allison. And they were going to babysit for us when we went to the rodeo. And when we came back, I'm thinking I maybe forgot something, but we went back, we had to go back. And we walked into the house and Rod was sitting in the great big giant green or orange chair that Grandma has with Dan on his lap, and he was tickling his face. And you could tell that Dan had been crying and crying, and he was just sitting there snuggling him and making him feel better. And that's who Rod was. He was gruff, but he was also very tender. And we had a lot of fun with Rod and Nancy.
I have a lot of stories as well, but one that I've always remembered is me and my family were hiking with my grandpa Rodney's birthday. It was that week. I don't know how old I was, probably around 7. And on the trail, I found a giant horseshoe. And so my grandpa told me to pick up the horseshoe and throw it over my left shoulder for good luck. So I grabbed this horseshoe and I go to throw it over my shoulder, and somehow it caught around my neck. And it rubbed around my neck a few times and then fell off my right shoulder. So my grandpa turns to my mom and he goes, "Well, I don't know if that's extra good luck or shit luck." But my family decided that throughout my life I've had a little bit of both. But I do know one thing for sure, and I was really lucky to have such amazing grandpa rods.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dale. I was a widow, and I was close with Rod, spent a lot of time with him, and I found it really hard to write in words what my friendship with Rod was. You would think it would be easy. I spent literally hundreds of hours with him in the field, chasing pheasants or whatever we were doing, lots of fishing. And I just couldn't put the words. The words were that I was trying to write. I spent so much time I would lay awake in bed at night trying to, and the words that I just couldn't put it into words. They were ringing hollow to me. And so I thought I would just simplify it. And I could get up and tell you stories, but then I could tell you so many stories. I could go on and on, especially just on the fact that the way Rod liked to talk. And I'm sure you know that. He's the only guy who used to say, "Rod, you could talk to a fence post." And it really was true, but there was, to keep it simple in my mind, there was a quote that came up, a quote that I love so much because it's so true. And the quote is, "The quality of a man's life and the strength of his character are in direct proportion to the quality of people with whom he surrounds himself." And Rod was proof of that. And I just want to get up here and thank Rod for a lot of things, but for being my friend, surrounding me in his friendship. I'll never forget him. And that's all I wanted to say.
My name is Jeff Siemens, and Rod and I we spent years together trying to preserve the Oneida Narrows. I just want you grandkids to know that he'd always say, "Jeff, I'm just a big dummy, and I want you to know that he could speak to any state representative, any secretary, any lawyer, anyone, and be heard. At a meeting we had with the State Board of the Water Resource Office, he said, I can always remember, I'm just a dairy farmer from Whitney, Idaho. And then he got emotional about what he was doing to help preserve that portion of the county. And that's the first time I'd ever seen him really committed and all in for getting this job done. He was the people person. I just pushed the pencil. And he said, Jeff, I couldn't have done it without you, but Rod, I couldn't have done it without you either. We made a good team. And he was a good man. He'd always say, looky here, Jeff. He'd always say, looky here, Jeff. We need to do this, or we need to do that. So anyway, but I just wanted you to know that he was a great person in that aspect, regardless of how we thought of his intelligence. He was a smart man, very smart, and he could talk to anybody, no matter who it was. So I just wanted to leave that with you. Thank you.
I couldn't even get through the prayer. I don't know how I'm going to talk. But I had the good fortune to work for Rod for a lot of years. I'm sure you've all heard the story. If the two of us were ever anywhere together, he would have said, well, this is old Clifford. When he was 14, his daddy dropped him off at the end of the lane. He was only 14. And he said, what am I supposed to do with him? But anyway, so from then until I went on my mission, I worked for him for 5 years, and then for 5 years when I got home from my mission. I say worked for him, but I worked with him. And I don't know if you call riding motorcycles and ice cream work, but I did learn a lot of things from him. And the thing about Rod, he didn't let like science and facts get in the way of his opinion a lot of times. And he would argue with a compass more than anybody I ever saw. And then we'd get back to the truck and I'll be darned, Clifford, how did that truck get there? But I never did hear you drop the F-bomb, but I think maybe it was just one of his mispronounced words when he was talking about I say it was just like, you know, I spent a lot more time with him than my dad. And I always dreaded this day would come, but I'm also happy in the knowledge that we got a few extra years. There could have been in 2017. Or multiple other times if he had some pistols. But, he used to always, my Rodnism is, he would always say to me, Clifford, if I didn't love you so much, I'd give you these dang cows. And he would have, but I like Mike. I decided, you know, maybe there was something that paid just a teeny bit better. But, it wouldn't have to pay much better because I would have thought I could have made it go, but I would have done it. But I knew that Rod wouldn't be there forever, and that would take the fun out once he wasn't there. So. Anyway, just one other thought I had is about Rod. When people were in board council talking about how to get him to come to church, he was probably out plowing snow for all the neighbors. And I appreciate the example. he was to me and my family. And till we meet again.
I'll be quick. One of my very favorite Uncle Rod stories was Well Flats, family reunions up there. There was one year, probably 14, 15 years ago, he had this great idea to go on a short hike. Don't know if you guys remember that. It was only like a mile, really easy. I think it was at least double, if not 3 times as long. But at that time I had 6 kids. I was by myself because my husband had to work. My dad wasn't even there for some reason. And wanting to go on a hike with 6 kids, my 2 youngest were almost 1 and barely 2. And he was determined to let me hike. So he decided to take the 1-year-old, who happened to be the larger and fattest of the 2, and the most sporty, and strapped him on a backpack and went on this 3-mile hike while I had the 2-year-old. He was like 73, 74, 75. He carried my other kids that were walking across streams. I think he out-hiked every single person that went on that hike. And that was Uncle Rod. Every time I saw him, he would act like it was the neatest thing to have me there. He always made me feel so loved. And if I could be half the person that he was, I felt like I would be a decent person. So I'm thankful for his example, for who he was. And when I was a kid, I always thought I was just something special because Uncle Rod always made me feel special. And as I got older, I realized that's just who he was and what he did with everyone. So I still feel special, but I know everybody else does too, and that's just a magical thing. So I'm grateful for his example.
My name's David Furman, and I love Uncle Rod. There's a reason I can't drink chocolate milk to this day, is because Rod had the wisdom from where I delivered milk at 4:30 in the morning. And I was very young, and so I can have all the chocolate milk at one. And on an empty stomach, chocolate milk gets to curdle. I can't drink it to this day. Uncle Rod took me fishing and a lot of times, and we also we go snow skiing. And one time we went to the lodge, and he had some ladies, very attractive ladies, cornered, or they had him cornered. I stood back and observed for a while. Finally, I went up behind him and yelled, "Hi, Uncle Rod," and his. He turned around and looked at me. He wasn't happy to see me for some reason. I don't know. My favorite story is when he took me hunting, and a big buck jumped out from behind us, and he literally threw me on the ground, shoved the rifle on my shoulder, and said, "Shoot him." Well, the barrel was making a circle about that big around, and I was letting the head go everywhere. And I think he counted the number of his shot, finally grabbed it, shot the deer, the buck in the head, and dropped it. Well, we hauled it off to a tree, and we got it up in the tree, and he told me to go over there and watch for something else. And nah, I'm not going to that. I want to see a deer get gutted. So I see he's gutting the deer, and he gets down to his testicle seat. Looks at me and goes, "Bet you wish you had a set like this." Yeah, you're right, Uncle Rod.
I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I'll just go right here. I happen to be Rod's youngest and only sister, and all of my brothers have passed away, and I have to correct some people about the cows. Rod did not call those. They were his girls. And millions of times I remember saying, Nancy, we gotta go home, we gotta take care of the girls. And you know what he did? He sang to the girls. When you opened the barn door, my brother had the radio on and he was singing full blast. So my brother Rod, I'm kind of like Dale. I have a hard time keeping from being scattered because I don't know quite the words she used for me. I'll give you the bad part first. Everybody probably in this room has heard that Rodney took me to the outdoor bathroom until I was 8 years old, in the middle of the night, during the rain, the sleet, and the snow, when I was sick. And I was born in 1942, and my father was at Hill Air Force Base. And the war had started, and Dad was too old to go, and we had cows. And my mother said that she used to tie me in the wheelchair, there's where I'm going. Anyway, in the high chair, and Rod would tend me. Now, Rod was 3.5 years older than me. And I have figured out my weight problem is Rodney would bring me cookies and crackers every time I cried. So I blamed that on Rod. Okay, and I was probably, if Rod had a crust to bear, it would have been me. Yeah, I was a lot of trouble, and I have to say something right now. Nancy usually stuck up for me, always. So that was great. But you know what? He walked me to school. He tended me. We rode over when my mom and dad would leave. We would get in my brother Gary's old truck he was working on, and we'd go around the haystack, Rod driving me, sitting there, a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and we would have the most fun. And we had a tree hut, and I learned to swim. I went to that Bear River where Mike was talking about, and I learned to swim really easy and really quick. He pushed me in. You swam, you swam. Rod was my biggest champion and he's the only person besides my mother can ever remember telling me no. And he worked at it really hard. He couldn't figure out why I needed to see the world. What was wrong with just going down the river and fishing? You know, he was just happy no matter what he did. But I gotta tell you something, there's a lot of love for my brother in this room right now. Because he loved every single one of you. He loved his family. He was, I don't know, you all knew him, so you knew what he was like. He was kind of bigger than life, and he was handsome, and he was funny, and he was kind of stubborn, and he thought all women should be like his mother, who was just about perfect. I kid you not. She plucked the duck, she cleaned the fish, and I can tell you, there were some women that actually thought there was going to be more women like my mother, Edith, and you all knew her. So it was kind of tough, but I had some really great women that married my brothers, even if they were Edith's boys. And it was a tough act to follow. Even my grandson was mentioned in how grandma, and my own son, grandma, I mean, that was his mother, and he was an honest boy. He loved his mother, and he loved his dad too. Anyway, I'm not going to talk too much. I just want to say something that I think about a lot. There's a lot of us in this room that are worried about where we're going after we die. We go around, we have this thing in our hand, we're going, Alexa, Siri. And what are we going to do about A and I? And what are we going to do about all this stuff? And Alexis gets us up in the morning and says, it's time to get up, it's 45 degrees, knock. Then we wonder if we are going to end now. Well, I can promise you, my brother's on a new journey, and he was ready to go there. And I want to tell you, I'm so grateful that all you people are here, and I want you to know, I have to thank my sister-in-law, Nancy, because she shared my love with my brother and her family, and we all loved each other, and I just appreciate that you gave me your family, Nancy. I want you to know that.
Okay.
I reserve the mic for my beautiful wife. We
time
only have 5 minutes.
we're definitely going over because, I started writing stories. Alan's funeral, I wasn't prepared because I wasn't going to talk. This time I decided I better get prepared. Lewis had to stand up and help me. This time I got my husband. This is going to be hard. Okay, so, like I said, I started writing stories. Basically turned into a 200-page novel. David told me I had to cut it down, so now it's only a 100-page novel. Because like Edith said, my dad was larger than life. And he was involved in a lot of people's lives. A lot of people have stories about him. I'm going to start with my stories and then some grandkids' stories and then stories that he liked to tell. So when I was young, my dad nicknamed me Bug, and it's now a permanent thing with me because I actually got a tattoo with it. On my 45th birthday, I went and got a tattoo, and it's got ladybugs on it, and of course right across the top of my foot says Bug. Showed up and showed my dad, and he looked at me and he says, "I sure hope that birthday money I gave you did not go towards that tattoo." And I said, "Well, it did, Dad. $20 paid for the word Bug." And he looks at me and just shakes his head because he does not like tattoos. But as he was shaking his head, he also had a tear in his eyes. So I knew he appreciated it. And another memory is me dancing when I was young, and a lot of people can probably resonate with this. Standing on your dad's feet and him holding your hands and dancing you around the living room. My dad did that a lot, and I think maybe later years he regretted that because it turned into me dancing for 11 years with the Toulourettes and him having to attend lots of dance recitals. My dad was great at headstands. We would have headstand competitions in the living room. My husband was surprised because when we got married, I could outdo him, but I could never beat my dad. He was great at headstands. Also, he was great at ping pong. Could never win him at ping pong, and he loved to play Pierce pong, is what we called it at family reunions. So I'm going to skip that story. Skiing. My dad always said that there was good and bad in every race and religion. But he really enjoyed being up on the mountain. And I remember one time the bishop coming and saying, "Rod, you can't go skiing on Sunday." But my dad was kind of a workaholic, and he worked 6 days out of the week. And our time was on the ski mountain, our family time. And he turned to the bishop, he told the bishop, "You know what? I'm closer to God on top of that mountain than I am asleep in church." And I'm thankful for that because I have a lot of memories. You could always find my dad on the hill because you just had to look for Santa Claus. He had his favorite red sweater, his red bibs, and I don't know if you guys saw the other room, his white hat. And it always reminded me of Santa Claus on the hill. And Michelle will appreciate this because I know you told me to tell this one. If you couldn't find him by his attire, you just had to listen for him singing. And he had a favorite song, "We are the Alpine Men. We like our whiskey, we like our gin, for we are the Alpine Men." And he'd sing that at the top of Peter Mountain. Let's see. All right, this one, built like a brick shit house. It was when I was about 35 years old, and I was having a conversation with my mom, and I says, I kind of blame Dad for my self-consciousness about my figure. And she's like, "Why is that?" And I said, "Well, Dad always told me I was built like a brick shit house." And she says, "Well, that's a compliment." And I says, "How is that a compliment? I'm short, I'm squatty, I'm short and there's nothing good about shit." She says, "Well, didn't he ever tell you the other half of that saying?" And she says, "Well, for one, if you had a brick shit house," I don't want to say that word too many times, but
she says, then you were all that. You were a little elite because you didn't have a wood outhouse. You had a brick shit house, so you were elite. And she goes, and don't you know the other half of the saying? No. Well, the full saying is, you're built like a brick shit house without a brick out of place, meaning you were well proportioned. I didn't learn this until 35. Let's see, another saying he would say when I go on dates, get dressed up, and he'd say, hubba hubba, you know, I come downstairs all dressed up, and he'd say, hubba hubba figure eight, you gotta swing like the garden gate. But he also had a saying when I wasn't looking very well, you know, show up a little bit rough, maybe in my pajamas, and he'd look at me and say, you look like you were dragged through a rat hole. You know, it was one of those sayings where you kind of sit there for a minute and like, okay, what does he mean by that? But I usually reply, I feel like it. Okay, so now on to my daughter's stories. My daughter Holly, she remembers the whisker kisses, which I've heard a lot of cousins talk about that. And then he would go for the whisker kiss, and then he would recite, rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in the tub, sailing the ocean blue. Rodism that Holly remembers is they had a pet snake, and he kept calling it a boa constrictor. Constrictor. And it was a sludge hammer instead of sledgehammer. Holly says the best summer I had as a kid was when I got to live with Grandma and Grandpa. I can't remember why I was in trouble, which that tended to happen. I know Todd from California, he would come and stay in the summers to get away from California people and learn life on the farm. Well, so apparently I sent my daughter, I don't remember this, but I sent my daughter when she was in trouble at age 14 to learn a few lessons on the farm. She says, I had to work hard to toughen up and do what I was told. I worked hard moving pipe, pulling weeds, milking cows, hauling hay, and anything else Grandpa told me to do. I ended up having an amazing time. It was great to spend so much time with my grandma and grandpa. I got fresh milk from the can every morning, Rocky Road ice cream every night. We watched great movies. There was a cute farm boy that helped us move pipe. After Grandpa noticed that we kind of liked each other, he all of a sudden wasn't coming around together. And she says, I'm grateful for all the time we had together. Another Lindsay story. Says as a kid, I did just about everything barefoot. One day I was riding my bike with no shoes and scraped a big chunk of skin off my toe. It almost came completely off, just a little sliver of skin was holding on. I showed Grandpa, and he pulled out his pocket knife. My dad always said, a man was never fully dressed unless he had his black belt and his pocket knife. When he pulls out the pocket knife, he says, here, let me see that. She says, I wanted nothing to do with it before I could stop him, he grabbed my toe and ripped the chunk right off. I was in pain, but he just looked at me and said, you're all right. It's a long ways from your heart. We heard that one a lot. Let's see, you did the horseshoe one. Oh, we're at a family reunion at Sawtell at Island Park. And in the afternoon, he decided we're going to go up to the top of Sawtell Hill. Now, it's got lots of switchbacks. It's kind of a scary road anyway. And we're doing it where the sun's going down, so it's in our eyes. And we're scared to death. And we get up at the top, and Lindsay jumps out of the truck, gets down on the floor, and says, I'm so glad to be on Earth again. Dad looks at her and says, well, you never left it. But that same ride, we're heading down the mountain, and Lindsay's having an apple and chokes on the apple. My dad looks back in the rearview mirror and he says, do I need to reach back there and give you a hem liquor? Lindsay laughed so hard that out came the apple. And my dad looks at us and says, works every time. I still don't think he realized he said the word wrong, but it works every time, he said. Okay, yeah. Another Rodism that Lindsay remembers is he bought his latest silver truck, F-150, and he gets in and says, you know, this truck is so fancy, it's got the fairy tooth. Meaning Bluetooth. My daughter Amy, this is one of my favorite ones, and I'm going to swear again. Speaking we're not in church, I'm going to swear again. But with my daughter Amy, my other daughters were there too, but my dad had, his favorite tree was quake and aspen. And a lot of people would shorten that word and just say quakies. My dad had his own word. And we're at Mill Hollow hunting, and Grandpa says to the girls, yeah, I want you girls to go up around those quaking ass. And I'm gonna come down around those quaking ass. And we're gonna meet in the middle at those quaking ass. And Amy looks up at Grandpa and she says, Grandpa, that's a lot of ass. And he was oblivious then too. He just looks out there like, what do you mean? And the funny thing is though, is a couple months ago, it rubbed off on people because I caught my cousin Lewis saying the same thing. Then saving the Bear River Narrows. I'm thankful for that because I had an annual trip for my birthday that we would float the Narrows. And so there's a picture of my daughter with, there's 7 girlfriends, and they're all in bikinis. And we'd float the river, and we'd get down to the bottom, and we always had to have a picture with the girls in the bikinis. And I said to Lindsay, why didn't you put that picture in the video? And she's like, well, we're all in bikinis, I didn't want to get embarrassed. Little does she know that my dad took that picture, bragged to his friends, and pinned it to the bulletin board at the coffee shop. I just got Okay, I do have to do the Alaska Rodisms. Okay, so we go on a family trip to Alaska, and this trip was full of Rodisms. And he meets a group of people, because he always met people, and we're sitting there, and he says, he's talking with them, and all of a sudden he says, I gotta go, I gotta take a whiz, meaning a whiz. Which I don't know why I had announced that to those guys, but then he says to me one night, Leslie, I need you to order me another one of those drinks, one of those mini cabalas. And I was like, pina colada? Yes. Then my Aunt Linda had one, because then she said, oh, well, when you're getting that, get me a Casper. And I'm like, give me a Caesar? And then we land at Stewart, and we're at the museum there, and there's a map on the board, and he starts telling us about this is the island that the Japanese, is the only place the Japanese actually attacked us on U.S. soil. And he says, but you know, there's a lot of Japanese that died that day. And he says, but not really from us. He says, a lot of them, they committed karaoke. Carry. Okay. All right. He was telling me I gotta skim down here.
Say no, you don't.
Oh my God. Okay, I got audience permission. So Rod stories. This was originally my mom's house, but Grandpa lived in there, and the house behind Big J's. And the mailman comes up and he says to Alan, where did your sister get that beautiful red hair? And Alan looks down and says, well, from Berkeley across the street. So I always made a joke because Berkeley was actually the town flasher. Right? So I made the joke that I didn't know if I was the mailman, the milkman, or the town flasher's daughter. A story, the John Wayne story. His cousin Kelly was speaking at a church fireside, and his topic was being a good example. And he asked Mike to come up, and Mike says, to Mike, who was your mentor? And Mike says, well, my dad. They asked Alan to come up, and he says, Alan, who was your mentor? And Alan says, John Wayne, and then my dad. My my dad loved to tell that story. My dad liked to tell the pancake lady story. He was working for Palisades for the Forest Service, and he, a lady says, "Oh, well, let me feed you guys." So she invites my Uncle Phil and my dad for breakfast, and they go over, and he says the house is full of kids, children everywhere, and cats everywhere. And this lady's cooking them breakfast and taking the spatula and flipping pancakes, and just as talking to him, well, a cat comes up, poops right on the floor next to her. She reaches down with the spatula, scoops it up, throws it in the garbage can, turns right back around and starts flipping. He said that was the last time they went to breakfast there. Another job story is with the Army. One of Dad's jobs was to, after the guys would be out in the field testing the bombs, they came to his station, and we're lucky that he wasn't just filled with cancer, because his job was they would take off their fatigues, hand them to him, and then my dad would hand them a bar of soap. And that's what his first job was. Yeah. Landing a plane on Stanley Highway. He was up with Bill Hollingsworth hunting bear up in Stanley. It was a remote area. The only way they could get in there was by plane. And bad snowstorm came. They were 2 days, my mom was getting really nervous because they were 2 days late getting home. And every time they tried to go out with a bad storm, they couldn't get over the mountain pass. Well, Bill finally says, "Okay, this is our last try. If we don't make it out now, we're gonna run out of gas." So they made it through the pass. They head to Stanley Airport to get gas. Airport's closed because they can't keep the runway cleared. So they're like, "Okay, the Chalice." They went to the Chalice Airport first. Then they turned around and headed towards Stanley. Well, they ran out of gas before they made it to Stanley, and they had to land that plane on the highway, and they coasted in to the gas station, filling up the planes with gas, and the sheriff shows up and tells those boys, "Hey, that's not allowed. You can't do that. You can't land a plane here." I said, "Well, we already did." Sheriff, good old boy, looks at him and says, "All right, fill it up and be gone in the morning." And that they had a picture of the plane pulled up at the gas station, and for years later, I'd go to Stanley and I'd see that pinned on the bulletin board. My dad was a really good singer. We've talked about songs before. His go-to songs was "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head," Mariah from Paint Your Raccoon. And I thought he was Robert Goulet. He kind of looked like Robert Goulet, and he sounded like Robert Goulet, especially when he would sing to my mom. And he would always sing to her, "If ever I could leave you," and then dance with her. And last, I'm going to wrap it up. I do want to thank my husband for being my rock for the last 3 years, helping me and my mom take care of Dad. Couldn't have done it without him. We did a lot of, good cop, bad cop. David was very, very patient with my dad. He knew how to talk with him and how to approach him, and was always so patient. He stopped whatever he was doing. If Dad asked him something, whether it was as simple as, "I know you just sprayed those 1,000 dandelions, but I want those picked." David, he would just do it. And we always got a kick out of, we're in our 50s, I don't know how old we are, but in our 50s, and we show up and we have e-bikes, and we go out on our e-bike rides. We got a big kick out of the fact that David would laugh all the time, but my dad would make me wear an orange vest. I kind of felt like, at this point I kind of felt like I was in junior high or elementary, because a lot of times I felt like I was back in high school. But I put on that orange vest that my dad required me to wear on my bike, and the 4-foot-high orange flag. Let's see. But I just want to say thank you to my husband, because not everybody can live with their in-laws. But I know that they love him, and my dad especially loved him. And you know, that's every dream that a girl wants, is for their parents to like their husband. But he did joke, because the night they met at the bar was actually famous Preston Night Rodeo weekend. So my mom and dad met during the Preston Rodeo weekend. Dave and I met at the Preston Rodeo, and my dad told my daughters, you're not allowed to go to the Preston Rodeo. And I'm going to end with a quote that we've all heard lately. Famous rock quote: "It's better to be seen than viewed." You know, it's sad that this day's come, but I know that he's in heaven fishing with all his family and friends that have gone before him, and he's probably caught the biggest still had fish in his life. Okay, that's all.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing all those stories. Everyone, really good to hear from friends along with family, so thank you so much. I had a few other things that I want to say a little over time. I'll shorten it up to just a couple of thoughts. Rod is a grandfather. He would call our daughters on their birthday and say, "Did I tell you you could be that old?" And then he would follow up with, "Do you know how old that makes me?" And that was him telling you he loved you. And he did that every year, and I know you guys look forward to that. I want to jump. I had a kind of a mushy ending. I'm already breaking us, so I'm just going to say thank you, Rod. And we're going to miss you. And lastly, thank you, Nancy, for taking such good care of Rod. And we're here for you. And with that, I'd like to ask Sean to come up and give us a closing prayer.
Kind of loving Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the chance we've had to gather here together today and to share all these stories about Grandpa Rod. We ask these to go about our lives, and whenever we think on him, we remember all these great stories and the times we shared together. And those stories will bring us comfort and little joy in our lives. We ask you to bless us as we leave now, that we will be able to travel in safety. We pray for these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I forgot to mention earlier, but there's a luncheon prepared for us at the Whitney Church House by the Franklin Second Ward. So for friends and family, please come and join us for lunch. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, you did awesome. You did. Oh my gosh. You did great, Mom.
Grandma.
Oh my gosh, he told that story every time it's involved. Oh, yeah.
Like that.
Skiing story. When
She just.
I finally got mad and couldn't get the word, and said the rest of the day I was on it. Yeah, I had it on my list, but I forgot. Yes, I do. I need to get all of this stuff in there into the Tupperware underneath the table. Yeah, there's a Tupperware underneath the table. We just need to gather up the stuff.
Under the table in here or in the other room?
The other room.
All right,
All right, you guys are coming. You want to try it?
No.
Oh, please? We got lots of people there. I told you 75 people. I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Two in the same day, dude.
They've watched what?
So we can't have two funerals in the same day. That's too sad.
All right. Well, let's go say bye to Nancy, Uncle Jim, Ray Lee.
Nice stubborn.
Yeah, he would say that.
There you go.
I was going to say the
Well, thanks again. I guess I better get it to the place. Yeah, probably. Oh, yeah. Take care. I can try to come up every year. That's here, but how about to make it up? I think maybe I have a high water. But you know, yeah. You know, of course, William, I don't know if him, William Phillips' daughter. Yeah, we got some food there for you. I don't know if I can help you with that again. Yeah, you bet.
No, I don't think so. You guys are gonna kind of gather your stuff and haul down to church and I'll just kind of share everything down here. Probably do it Monday. Yeah, you guys are good shape. Thank you. Appreciate you. But if you need something, let me know.